Hello and welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Guys, today we're going to be talking to you about some of the mass shootings that have been occurring, and we have a fabulous guest with us. John Lott is going to be joining us to discuss these issues. He wrote a fabulous column on the Federalist. Do gun control groups care what really causes mass shootings? Everytown lawsuit says no. We're going to dive into the details of that. Obviously, you guys know John from his book, More Guns, Less Crime. He is an amazing researcher when it comes to ways in keeping people safe. And it's just strictly data. So you're going to love this guy. If you haven't heard of him, go out and get his book, More Guns, Less Crime. A lot of people use it as a reference book. John Lott, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Appreciate you joining us today.
Well, thanks very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
And thanks for getting up so early, John. I feel so bad. I don't know why. I was thinking you were on the East Coast like me, but you're on the West Coast, or at least Mountain Time in Montana. So thanks so much for getting up so early for us. We appreciate it.
Well, I used to be on the East Coast, but after I worked in the Department of Justice in Washington, I basically wanted to get about as far away from D.C. as I could get.
Speaking of that, John, now that you mention that, I have this theory that I'd love to run by you just based upon what you just said. A lot of people, especially on the right, like myself, will say, often say that we need term limits in Washington, D.C. I'm convinced that we just need to move people out of Washington, D.C. and we'd have a better Congress, if you will. Better decisions would be made. Am I far off on that?
Well, I'm not sure if you just kind of move the problem to other parts of the country or not. But, one of the big problems you have with D.C. is you have so many people concentrated in one area that have kind of similar biases. I mean, people like to believe that they're doing good things. So if they're working in the government, they want to convince themselves that what the government's doing is good. And your income and everything else increases as the government gets bigger. And bureaucracies seem to be able to find, more things that they're supposed to be able to do. You have massive mission creep that's going on there. Yeah. And I guess each time I've worked twice in the federal government. Each time I've gone and worked in the federal government, it's kind of convinced me of kind of my worst fears are true. You just have a lot of people in the government who are true believers in kind of left-wing type stuff. And it's there's a real deep state there. And, I'm not sure if simply moving the stuff out of Washington will solve it. I think you just have to be willing to every once in a while go through and just cut things and just get rid of a lot of people. And maybe one of the things to do is just to make sure that people don't spend their whole lives there. Yeah. Maybe like a term limit on how long people can work for the government. So it's not like, because otherwise people kind of view their whole life as, can they make the government kind of get bigger and do things otherwise? So if they feel that they have to go into the kind of the private sector later on, maybe they'll have a little bit different perspective on things.
Yeah, that's definitely what I would like to see. I don't like to see our congressmen spending so much time there. I just wish they'd stay home in their districts and go back when needed. I don't even think they need to be voting there. I mean, the majority of the times. I actually made an argument back in the day that I thought the Supreme Court should be moved to Montana. I'm not realizing that you were in Montana because I'm afraid of groupthink. I think you're right. People go there, they think they're right. They're being told how smart they are. They're all concentrated in one area, and they start thinking the same way, no matter what party they're in. I'd just love to see them moved, and I'd love to see them have to live around real people, if you will, and go to places that real people go to, and speak to real people on a daily basis instead of all these people that live in the swamp, so to speak. But anyway, I didn't intend to go there, but based on your answer, I just figured I'd ask you. But before we get to your column here, John, and again, John Lott is our guest. Go out and get his book, More Guns, Less Crime. Actually, he's written several books. So just go out and get his stuff, read his stuff. I mean, honestly, if you want to know anything when it comes to gun stats, self-defense stats, remind me of the name of your website here, John. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Crime Research?
Crimeresearch.org.
Okay.
Crimeresearch.org.
Okay, so crimeresearch.org. Make sure you go there. The latest data on a lot of this stuff is there. He does an amazing job. He is probably the best researcher out there, frankly, on any of this stuff. All right, John. So the left is at it again. I was pleased to hear this sheriff in Jacksonville, Sheriff T.K. Waters, do what I feel like the Republican movement should do every time you hear of a mass shooting. And obviously, there was a mass shooting in Jacksonville. That's what I'm speaking of. There were blacks that were targeted by, I guess, a white supremacist and a Dollar General. Never mind the fact that there are shootings every week in Chicago, Camden, New Jersey, LA, so on, New York City. Those don't get mentioned because the media really doesn't care when black people kill black people. But they are very interested when whites take a gun and kill black people. And I know that's a mantra that you hear a lot from the right, but listen, let's face it, it's true. But I love what this gentleman, this Sheriff T.K. Waters did, John. And I want to get your response to this because, in my opinion, he framed this correctly. Metal, which guns are made of, isn't the issue. Morals are the issue, the person behind the gun. Here's Sheriff T.K. Williams of Jacksonville. I'd like to get your comment after this, John.
The story is always about guns. The people are bad. This guy's a bad guy. If I could take my gun off right now and I lay it on this counter, nothing will happen. It'll sit there. But as soon as a wicked person grabs a hold of that handgun and starts shooting people with it, there's the problem. The problem is the individual.
All right. So a simple statement, John. I don't hear it enough. I don't hear enough from the people that pretend to defend 2A rights. And I know, as you said, you're not necessarily a 2A guy. You're a stats guy. You're a safety guy. But what's your response to Sheriff T.K. Waters in his response to the Jacksonville shooting?
Right. Well, I mean, I agree with him that this is a tool. I guess I would phrase it a little bit differently. I mean, I think guns do make it easier for bad things to happen, but they also make it easier for people to protect themselves and prevent bad things from happening. And the question is kind of what's the net impact of that? Guns by itself aren't going to go and harm people. Obviously, it's the person that's behind them. So I agree with them on that. But it's just the thing is, when you look at it, people use guns defensively to stop crime about 5 times more frequently each year than guns are used to go and commit crime. Most people would have no clue about that simply by listening to the news. If anything, they probably think the opposite's the case. And yet, look, anybody who's read my academic research knows that I think police are extremely important. I think police are the single most important factor. But police themselves understand that they virtually always arrive on the crime scene after the crime's occurred. And the question is, what should people do when they're having to confront a criminal by themselves? And police are probably the strongest supporters of private gun ownership simply because they know how important it is that people be able to go and protect themselves when they're having to confront a criminal by themselves. And if my research convinces me of anything, it's that it's the most vulnerable people in our society who benefit the most from having the ability to go and protect themselves. There's 2 groups of people that my research shows to me who benefit the most. And the one group are those who are relatively weaker physically, women and the elderly. You're almost always talking about young men doing the attack. And when a man is attacking a woman, there's a lot larger strength difference that exists there on average than when a man is attacking another man. And so the presence of a gun represents a much bigger relative change in a woman or an elderly person's ability to go and protect themselves. The other group of people who benefit the most are the ones who are the most likely victims of violent crime. And that's very clearly poor blacks who live in high crime urban areas. Again, it'd be great if the police were there all the time to protect people, but they're not. And the question is, what should people do when they're having to confront criminals by themselves? And the sad thing is that so much of the gun control makes it costly and difficult for these very people, the people who are the most likely victims of violent crime, to be able to go and protect themselves. You have all these fees and taxes and regulations that make it costly for people to go and get guns. Who do they think they're pricing out of it? You look at a state like Illinois, where it costs over $400 to go through the process to get a concealed carry permit. Who do they think they're stopping from being, the Democrats control that state? Who do they think they're stopping from being able to go and obtain a gun for protection? You have women who are being stalked or threatened, and they want to have these universal background checks so that if you have a female friend who calls you up and is worried that her ex is going to come and harm her and asking if she can borrow your gun, she's well trained, she has no criminal background. You lend her your gun, you're committing a felony. And then they want to go and make it, 60 days or 90 days, or in Connecticut, 100 over a year to get a concealed carry permit. Well,
that is insane.
The woman may not have a day, let alone a week, let alone 90 days to wait to be able to go and get her concealed handgun permit, to be able to go and protect herself. And what you very frequently hear women's rights groups go and say is, if a woman's being stalked, she may change her name, she may quit her job, she may move. If she goes to work, make sure she takes a different route each day, travels at a different time, move in with somebody. When she goes shopping, make sure somebody's always with her. She has to completely uproot her life. I mean, once in a while, you may hear them go and advise her to go and get martial art training. But I mean, let's be serious. If you're talking about a 130-pound woman up against a 200-pound man, his size and strength differences are going to offset almost any training that she's likely to get. But you never hear them go and advise the woman to get what would be by far her best source of defense, and that is to go and get a concealed handgun for protection.
And I this is an argument, or a couple of both of these arguments that you made. I have adapted them or adopted them, and I'll be on Mike Gallagher's show tomorrow, so I'm going to talk about this as well, and talk about your column as well on there, John Lott, and make sure people go out and read more of your material and follow you, because this stuff is so important. There's a local issue. I'm here in Orlando, Florida, and the story is somewhat new. I don't want to go into great detail because I'm not even sure. Some of the people that are involved aren't too far from me. I'll put it that way. And so anyway, a woman wanted to get a restraining order from her ex. She was unable to do so. The judge did not give her the restraining order. Just the other day, this woman was murdered by her ex, and I'm just sitting there wondering, man, had she had a gun to be able to protect herself, perhaps she'd be alive today. Certainly, I don't know that for a fact, but obviously her odds of surviving that attack would have been much greater. And now she's dead. So this is the stuff that happens. All right, John, I want to move to you wrote a fabulous column, as you often do. And I saw it first at the Federalist. Obviously, it's everywhere if you Google it now. But at the Federalist, the title is "Do Gun Control Groups Care What Really Causes Mass Shootings?" Everytown lawsuit says no. And obviously, you're speaking of Everytown for Gun Safety. That is Michael Bloomberg's organization. They are strictly, in my opinion, an anti-data and anti-2A group. They're looking to undermine the Second Amendment. But this has gone largely under the radar, John. The Biden administration has been using the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, firearm, in order to just take licenses away from gun dealers, gun sellers. I mean, for some of the craziest and tiniest things, in some instances where it just seems arbitrary and purposeful. Your take?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. Look, they have what's called their zero tolerance policy, which any paperwork mistake, no matter how trivial the typo, no matter how inconsequential, they'll take away the license for the firearms dealer. And there's one case I was just reading about a couple days ago in North Texas, where a man 15 and 16 years ago, basically, I believe because of dyslexia, had kind of transposed a couple letters in two different forms. And the Obama administration had looked into it and basically decided, he made a mistake, but it was completely trivial, and they closed the case.
Right.
Well, now the Biden administration, they haven't found any paperwork mistakes, any typos or anything in the intervening 15 years, but they've reopened these
Unbelievable.
two cases from 15 and 16 years ago,
You
and
gotta be kidding me.
and are taking away his license. And so, it's just, it's not like the Obama administration was particularly friendly towards gun dealers that were there. And so, it's just, it's just crazy stuff. You just see that time after time after time. I mean, I think there ought to be a rule that says any government agency that makes any typo, any paperwork mistake over the last 15 or 16 years, even one ought to be put out of business. See how many government agencies stay in existence if you were to adopt such a rule.
It's amazing to me too, John, because I don't even hear Republicans talking about this.
They are. I mean,
okay.
I mean, I know at least a number of congressmen have. The thing is, the media doesn't care about this stuff. And it's just not this too. I mean, I know my friend Thomas Massey, for example, has gone into this, and he's gone into many other issues. He's gone into the fact that the Biden administration's putting pressure on financial institutions not to go and do business with, firms that they dislike. And, that is not just people in the energy sector, but also, firearms dealers and gun makers. Try to run a business if you can't have a financial institution that will handle the credit cards for your customers, or go and handle the checks that you or your customers have, or won't provide lending to you. Just try to go and run a business like that, and it's just many different ways that they're driving places out of business, and of course that makes it more costly, more difficult for people to be able to go and buy guns for protection, which I think is their goal.
And I guess what I should have said, because you're absolutely right, there are some congressmen like Thomas Massey who gets blasted by some on the right as a rhino, which I'm like, are you guys smoking crack? You must be hanging around with Hunter Biden for saying such things. It's just really stupid. I feel like conservatives eat their own oftentimes. But I am talking about, we're in an presidential election season. I don't hear enough about this from our top candidates. And frankly, there are some that actually have a platform of cutting the size and scope of government in each agency. I know DeSantis has said he wants 50% cut. Obviously, Trump has the drive to cut the size of government. I'm not sure what his plan is exactly, but obviously he'll be going after the DOJ, which I feel is a good thing. Beyond that, I'm not sure that I hear anyone else even talking about cutting the size of government, where these people can't affect our lives in the ways in which they do now. I want to. There's something else that you wrote about that I think is significant, and at the time you wrote about this at the time too, and I knew this would have large implications, and indeed it does. But you write just a few years ago, a lawsuit helped drive the 200-year-old Remington Arms into bankruptcy, but activists won't stop suing gun shops and anyone else that comes close to the industry. And I've spoken to some people since once this Remington case took place, and some of the things that I heard, well, it wasn't Remington directly, it was this company and that company. But I'm sitting here thinking, if the government can go after a gun manufacturer because an evil person uses a gun in a shooting, we're in bad. The Second Amendment is in bad shape. Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, this has been a strategy that gun control activists have been pushing for, I don't know, 25 years or more now, where they want to go and just make it costly for people to be in business. I mean, you could imagine if we were to have lawsuits against car companies because of a car accident. Let's say the driver isn't paying attention and gets into an accident. Should General Motors or Ford be liable for any medical costs? Should they be liable for any lost wages? Should they be liable for any pain and suffering because the driver was talking to somebody or was sleepy when they were driving? I assume people would be against that. The Biden keeps on making this claim that gun makers and gun sellers are, exempt from all lawsuits. And if they sell a gun without going through the proper background checks or following the law on selling the guns, they're liable for any harm that occurs. If they sell a gun that's defective, if somebody gets hurt because the gun wasn't properly made, they're liable. What they're not liable for is kind of the proper use of the gun, in a sense, to go and commit some harm, to go and rob a bank or whatever. Should a car company be liable if somebody uses a car in a getaway from robbing a bank? Presumably people would say no. The person who used the car improperly should be liable. But they may not win these lawsuits, but simply the number of lawsuits make it very costly for people in this industry to be able to operate, makes them have to pay high liability insurance. The legal costs for these things are large. And the vast majority of gun dealers and gun sellers are very small. I mean, here, for every town, you have this one little gun store in upstate New York is being sued. In this case, they did the background check. They did the background check properly. I'm not exactly sure what they were supposed to have done there. They're suing the parents of the Buffalo mass murder, and they're suing social media companies for supposedly addicting this guy to extremist views. I look at this and I think this is not serious. I mean, just read the guy's manifesto. If you want to know who's responsible, he makes it very clear. He explains in detail why he picked the target that he did. He wanted to go.
Can I read? Let me read some of his direct quotes from his manifesto that you've written in the column. And again, I'm speaking to John Lott, the author of More Guns, Less Crime, also crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org. If you want any stats, not just on guns, self-defense, and some of the court cases and all that good stuff related, crimeresearch.org. But John was talking about you may recall the Buffalo mass shooter. He went into a grocery store. He ended up shooting or murdering 10 people in a grocery store in Buffalo, New York. Now, every town for gun safety has come out after his parents. They're suing his parents. They're suing media companies or social media companies. So they're going after everybody. All of this undermines the Second Amendment. But here's what they're not telling you. These are direct quotes from his manifesto that John has written in this column. Again, the column I found at the Federalist: Do gun control groups care what really causes mass shootings? And here's what this guy says directly from his manifesto, and I quote: basically areas where CCW, concealed weapons carrier, so areas where CCW are outlawed or prohibited may be good areas of attack, writes the shooter. He goes on to say areas with strict gun laws are also great places of attack. I mean, and he also goes on. He's a self-described eco terrorist or eco fascist. You say that every town does not say, or the organization doesn't mention that the Buffalo mass shooter self-identified as a quote eco fascist national socialist, close quote. This guy is not a conservative by any stretch of the imagination. The evidence that they need, or if the media wanted to get to the crux of the issue, they have it with this manifesto, and they're completely silent, John. They're completely silent.
Right. Well, you know, it's just not here. I mean, there are time after time where these mass murderers leave diaries, leave manifestos where they make similar statements. These guys may be crazy in some sense, but they're not stupid. Their goal is to commit suicide, but to get media coverage. They feel unappreciated. They want to get their names in the history books, and they know the more people they kill, the more media coverage that they're going to get. And they know if they go to a place where their victims aren't going to be able to go and defend themselves, they're going to be more successful in killing more people. So it's not rocket science that's going on here. And I can go through, and on our website at crimeresearch.org, we have lots and lots of examples of this type of stuff that goes on. And, you know, they want to talk about the extremist views. Well, as you just going through here, every place from the New York Times, the Washington Post, say if you're a racist, that means you're a conservative. And so this Buffalo mass murderer they've described many times as a conservative right winger. As you say, I don't know, and you obviously don't know too many conservatives that call themselves eco-fascists or call themselves mild, moderate, authoritarian leftists. The guy he was racist, but he was a racist because he was an environmentalist. He was upset about people having too many kids. He thought that having more kids was damaging the environment. And that he thought that if he could simply, if he needed to get rid of blacks because they were having too many kids. So again, I don't know too many conservatives that are upset about people having kids.
Right.
It's who's making those comments about the environment. You have people like AOC who's wondering whether people should have any kids. You have people like Biden talking about the existential threat that the environment poses to the existence of mankind. Those are the people that are getting people agitated and upset and doing these things. And it's amazing how many of these mass murderers are environmentalists who are concerned about people having too many kids, whether it's the Walmart shooter in El Paso or other ones that we can mention in the United States or even around the world. The New Zealand mosque murderer was very clear about the same thing there.
What would you say the percentage of mass shooters that are turning out to be some type of eco terrorists, eco fascists, are subscribed to this ideology?
Well, look, the vast majority of these mass murderers have no ideology. They're just people who want to commit suicide, and they'll write things like, if I can only kill more people than such and such did, I can get even more media attention. And you have about 8% that are classified as racist in some way. Some of those are National Socialist types, but some are environmentalists. I'd say maybe more than half of them are. And, but it's still, it's a tiny percentage of the total that's there.
Sure.
And, these guys are you have to ask who's agitating them, who's kind of getting in this. Of course, I'm not going I don't say you should sue Biden. I don't say you should sue AOC for saying stupid things like that. You have freedom of speech and political debate and stuff, and I don't hold them responsible for people like the nutty Buffalo murder, though I'd probably ask them to, make more reasonable things than AOC claiming the world's going to end in 12 years when she made
Right.
that stupid statement. But um, uh, and I'm not going to sue Bernie Sanders when the guy goes and shoots the Republican congressman a few years ago for getting that guy upset. But look, but it's just bizarre for them to, people like Everytown just seem to completely ignore what's actually in this guy's manifesto, just like the media does. Somebody has to give me a benign explanation for why the media just refuses to go and mention things like why these killers say they picked the targets that they did, why they want to go to place these gun-free zones. Why you will look in vain to find anybody in the mainstream media actually mention those types of facts. Just quote from those parts of their manifesto. They claim they're going through the manifestos, but they don't mention the left-wing views for these guys, and they don't mention why they pick the targets that they do.
And it's shocking to me because they could absolutely, in my opinion, save lives. But
well, isn't it newsworthy? Isn't it newsworthy to know why these guys are picking the targets that they do? Why isn't that interesting? They they claim they're covering the manifestos and diaries, but they do so selectively. But there are all sorts of cases. This year you have the Covenant school shooter in Nashville.
Yes, I was just about to get to that. Thank you.
Where you have a situation where
the trans shooter.
Yeah, well, the Biden administration won't release the manifesto that's there, or the diary, I guess it's more likely to describe it as that, where this person apparently had another target in mind as their primary target, was going to go after what I understand was a mall. But because of armed security and people being able to have permanently concealed handguns there, the murderer picked what they thought was an unguarded target, this school, and it's just one out of many cases. We only know about this because the Nashville police chief had gotten a look at the manifesto that was there and made a comment about this. But did any of the national media pick that up? You would think this person decided not to go after one target because people had guns there that could protect them. Instead went on to another target. Isn't that newsworthy? Isn't that interesting? Isn't that important to know that you can cause these guys to go and move away from one target and discourage them from doing it if people have guns at those places?
Do you suspect, John, that perhaps some of these news organizations might be fearful of Mike Bloomberg's organization? Do you suspect perhaps that it is just strictly ideological? For instance, the example that I would give is the Jacksonville shooting. This one certainly was played out in the media. Even mainstream media reported it. They went after Governor Ron DeSantis over it. When he went to console, if you will, or speak to the community, the Jacksonville community about this. But there was incentive for the media, the mainstream media, at least the left wing media, if you will, and that is they could play this narrative that whites are out hunting for black people. And that's what happened in the Dollar General store in Jacksonville. That's the narrative. That's the only time they report this stuff.
A couple minutes.
Okay.
But the point is that you had a similar situation in Jacksonville to what I was just describing a minute ago. You had
we can barely hear you, John. Sorry.
You have the guy who was going to attack the all-black college that was there, the historically black college. And but he ended up, some of the students ended up seeing that this strange guy was there, had alerted security, and and he got chased away from the school, which was a gun-free zone, by the way, and ended up going to a nearby Dollar General to go and do the attack. But
Wow.
you have the University of North Carolina shooting that just occurred. In that case, was also a gun-free zone that the person had picked there. One person was killed, the professor in that case.
Right.
But in that case, the guy was prohibited clearly. He's a non-immigrant alien on a student visa. You're not allowed to go and possess a gun or ammunition under those circumstances, yet somehow he apparently got a gun. So you have both a gun-free zone, and the person who got the gun was banned from having a gun. In the Jacksonville case, it was a gun-free zone, and it appears that he may, though I'm not as certain about this, also have been a prohibited person, because there are news stories, though not consistently so, saying that the guy had been involuntarily committed to a mental health hospital, which would, if that's accurate, would have prohibited from having a gun. And so you have at least two laws that were being broken there in both of those cases, and yet these guys were able to obtain a gun and do it. And the problem that you face with a lot of these gun control laws is that it's the most law-abiding citizens who obey the rules. And the problem is that if the bad guys still get a hold of guns, they're going to be at a real advantage. I mean, there's a reason why every place in the world that's either banned all guns or all handguns has seen an increase in murder rates.
Listen, today's show was brought to you by MyPillow.com. Right now, they've got a fabulous deal going on where you get 50% off of their Giza Dream Sheets. All you have to do is mention my name in the promo code. That is Carl, C-A-R-L. Use my name, 50% off of the Giza Sheets. Plus, they have deep discounts on all of My Pillow products right now. So you can shop early for Christmas, birthdays, whatever you wish. If there's something that you've been considering, please go to MyPillow.com. Support the Patriot Mike Lindell, American jobs and American manufacturing. Plus, you get a good night's rest. I mean, My Pillow slippers, bed mattresses, bed toppers, dog beds, you name it, it's there, mypillow.com. I appreciate you guys tuning in to the Carl Jackson Show. Until next time, don't grow weary doing good, and God bless you.